duplicate those dashboards, and I'll share what we have come up with. And also mostly today just talking about how we can incorporate your manhole and your gravity main data for manhole inspections and jetting. I know the Hazel Township we create a survey for, and we have one other community, Montague of Massachusetts, that we've done a little simpler inspection method with GIS. So we'll kind of show both examples, but like Seth said, this is pretty informal training today. So if you guys want to chime in at any point and speak up, feel free. Let's go ahead and start sharing my screen. So first, we'll go over Montague's wastewater collection system. It's a pretty large system spread out in kind of 3 different territory areas. So what you're looking at is the manholes in these green icons. We zoom in further, we have the gravity manhole, or the sewer gravity mains that we can trace and follow with the arrow directions. This orange halo around everything in this section are all the manholes and mains that they've inspected and jetted. So we can go towards their downtown area, Turner Falls, and see some of these manholes and mains haven't been inspected or jetted yet, but this is a quick way that we can track using GIS what we have jetted or manhole inspect. So for example, if I just click on one of these manholes, it'll have any basic attributes for that manhole, the standard type. We tried to give IDs for all the manholes. They have a pretty exhaustive assets management program that we're trying to build, so that did take quite a while to ID, based off the street. So if you see the acronyms here, the labels on each manhole, like for example, Vladish Ave, we'll have VL1, VL2, and then here we're on Chester Street, so it's the first manhole on Chester is how we've ID'd these. Asset IDs are super crucial to have a nice tracking mechanism, and especially if you're sharing this data with engineer firms, then they can link up that asset with that ID. We can also have very basic IDs, that's just a number, it could be MH-1, and then go all the way up to 1,000, or how many manholes you have. So that's kind of how we built that to start with. Have a few number of inlets, outlets, comments. This shows a slight raise. We also tried to get the surface elevation and invert elevation. The inverts were provided by the engineer firm. A lot of our systems, we can get the surface elevation through some data sets available online, so that's always nice to have. And then lastly, we can see this was inspected on October 13th. So whenever you have any inspections, they'll pop up at the bottom or top based on how we configure the pop-up. I think Hazel Township will be at the top, what we show next. But if you have multiple inspections, they'll show all the inspections here in this pop-up. And with Montague, I'd have to share my phone to show that setup, so maybe I can do that after to show how they're using it. They're not using a survey form, they're just using the field maps embedded for the inspections. If I click on that inspection, a lot of these are pretty basic, like don't have much filled out. They might indicate which manholes that they notice ponding, sheeting, or if the flow's backed up. And if they've used equipment to measure the invert, and if there's any problems and the specific sub-assets of that manhole, such as the frame riser, or if the offset. So, and they'll just show when that was last edited, versus, if we click on one that doesn't have a record, such as this, it'll just have that characteristics, no records were found. So I'll show kind of how they go through to do that on the field maps by sharing my phone. But since I'm able to do everything on the computer for Hazel Township, I'll switch over there in a minute. But yeah, that pretty much shows a quick layout. I like kind of showing this area better because you can see some of the mains and manholes were inspected while others weren't. And you can still see, even though they have quite a lot of data, there's still some incomplete parts, like this manhole going to here. There were a few missing manholes, such as you can see on this street, Stevens Street, that they're marked as 7.ST-23. So those were old asset IDs from their old asset management program. And so they wanted to change everything based on the street. So we can kind of see which ones still need updating, or areas like we would want to add a gravity main connecting in, unless it truly does start there and there's no main in between. So we won't add that unless the utility confirms. But everything is editable in here too. So this is the experience builder we're mostly using now for any water, wastewater systems, to be able to edit and add, like if you have a new manhole or a new gravity main. We like to symbolize the pressured mains differently. So if we zoom out, they have a few pressured mains. Here's one up here. So now we can see where the pressured main versus the gravity. And of course, we won't have the arrow direction on pressure because that's based on how it's set up with the pump station or lift station. But the gravity mains, of course, having those arrows is super helpful. So jumping over, a more simplified symbology, we don't have the gravity main jetting set up for Hazel Township. We just started setting up for the manhole inspections. There's only a few that they've used this for so far, but we're hoping to kind of revisit with them and see how we can improve it or get some more inspections logged. Some utilities will have the inspections logged on their paper, go back and put in the GIS. The goal is to hopefully be that you don't have to use the paper and you can go straight into the GIS, so you don't have to do it twice. And that's how we designed this system with the survey. So if we click on a manhole, here's Seth here, GPS in the manhole. So we have a photo. We have any information that was logged. And then the inspection shows at the top. So we can see the last inspection was October 10th. And a photo of what that inspection looks like. You can click on it and make it full size on your computer or laptop. You can view this on your phone at full screen. Any notes they have, the weather, inspection date, some similar questions like Montague, and everyone might have a little different priorities or what they want to collect, or how large or small your utility system. Montague, even though they're very large, or for our RCAP communities, very large wastewater collection system, they only have one person that actually does all the CCTVing and jetting, and so they're hoping to get a second person, because as you guys know, that's quite a bit of work to do by yourself. So we tried to minimize it more for them, but for Hazel Township, we wanted to replicate exactly how they had their paper record. So if we click on this inspect manhole button, it'll automatically open up survey 123. Let me drag that on my screen. And this is how it would work on your phone too. You click on that manhole, there's a survey point, and we usually do this configuration for any kind of wastewater or water operation and activity. So anything that's O&M, operation maintenance, we try to have a survey button, or as we'll show in Montague's, a related table record. And what that allows is multiple inspections over years on the same manhole. So you're not overriding your inspection data, you store everything individually. So it automatically will record today's date and the time. You can always go back if you're putting in a old record to a last month or year and change that. So I could go back 2023 even and say I'm recording a record that was, from my paper record. So you can put the inspector initials, how much rainfall or just snowfall, any weather, especially up in New England, getting some snow coming soon. It's just kind of crazy trying to keep up with the bipolar weather. And that's a good way to show, if that inspection, if there's an overflow, then, did it result from the weather or was it a structural defect? So this is really critical to log that. We could probably have something that has historic weather that we could reference with that date, but it's always best to actually record it, because even if you look at weather data, your community might not have got as much rain or snow as even 5 miles down the road. So that's why this is kind of good to show. Such as even if that manhole was in a location where there's a lot of snow melt that runs off and drains into the manhole, rather than having some uh, proper drainage like culprits and other drains. Then they can take the picture from the outlet. We even added a spot so they can draw on here. So it's a little annotation here. It's gonna try to get pull up a photo of me here because I'm using my webcam, but you can add photos, additional photos, but this first image you can actually draw on. So that's pretty cool. And let me see. I wonder if I could upload one as an example. I don't care if it shows me for a second here. But yeah, this would be the camera angle. I don't think it's going to work because I'm on my laptop here. Oops, I accidentally just X'd out the whole survey. Let me pull that back up. And actually, if you X out too, it'll record data on the back end of the app. So where I X'd out the app entirely, if I hit continue survey, it'll load up and it still has my initials in 2023. So that's a nice thing about survey 123 is even if you X out the app, it'll actually store that local giraffe. And Field Maps does not do that. So that's an advantage of survey 123. But anyways, we can expand these groups and actually record all the information needed. We can change this, or if utility doesn't want a certain question anymore, we can hide that question and update that survey in real time. You just have to re-download the survey and then it'll update. So yeah, we can record. We have all default values as no problems, no infiltration. But obviously, if you're coming across problems in the channel, it's broken, any kind of notes you can put in here. I don't know, Seth, if you have their original paper inspection record, maybe you could show that after so we could show a side by side of how we're able to translate from their paper inspection into this digital, because they were recording a lot of these same exact information and questions, and then the notes at the bottom. You just hit the submit button. I'm not going to do it just because this is a live version of their survey and I don't want to mess it up and add another record to their existing one. But even if
Got
you
my
get
email
to
today. I emailed it to
Okay.
you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so even if you did two inspections over the same period, it will still show this black halo, or whatever we set it as. I think like Montague's, theirs was the orange, as you saw, but just kind of a halo that indicates which ones have been inspected, and we can change that um, with a range filter for the last year, last 6 months, last week. So we can kind of change that however you want to view which manholes were inspected over what course of time. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much the run through of the survey. And then so to get to the dashboards, I'm gonna show the water ones briefly. We had a training last week that we showed these examples. So like I think Eric was on there, so he'll be familiar with this. But um, any valve that we had on here, we wanted to show the total number of valves, the purpose, how many you want to exercise, and then you could click on these and have information gather. And then everything in the yellow is like a summarized data. Everything in the light blue is based on that one specific valve that we click on inside our table list here. So you can see a lot of information at your, with your fingertips here. Same thing with the hydrants, very similar, but a little more data. Um, so I can click on here. Let's find one that they'll have static, whatever kind of pressures that's recorded. So if it was just a basic conventional flush, it won't have static, but here's one that does. So if they did a full flow rate capacity, so we can show a lot of calculation analytics too. And there might be some calculations in the wastewater side we can do, such as invert values and everything, but more so it's actual simple data record keeping. So we won't see as much calculations probably, but last example is like water leaks. So we can have break types, and we can use these pie charts. Like if you click on one, then it can filter out in the map. So that's a pretty cool feature. So we can do that with manholes and jetting too. We don't have these dashboards created fully, as you can see it just like an hour ago. I started duplicating the valve structure we have um, to update with the mains, and I'll refresh
I
both of
was
these.
about to tell you that you updated will be better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a very messy draft, but we assumed in this training, being kind of informal too, we can show how it looks like when we're designing this to change it. So if we have like an existing dashboard for one kind of asset, we might just go ahead and duplicate the entire dashboard and then change the map and what kind of characteristics are being showed. So if I get out of the edit mode here, notorious for having a lot of tabs. Here we go. So like instead of valve purpose, we'll change this to the manhole purpose. Like if it's or type of manhole, if you have a drop manhole or something that's a little less common, it'll be similar to valves where the majority are standard, but you might have a couple um, that are drop manholes or some kind of other type that you want to indicate. Um, we can total up the sewer main lengths here. Originally it was in feet, like 42, was 100,000 feet or so. We had to convert that to miles, but we could show both of those. Um, we can have our sewer main jetting records in here, and we'll end up filtering it. If you click on this, it'll filter the map when we get ready. Same kind of setup with the water utility. You can see our sewer mains with the IDs and when it was jetted. And when you click on that, it can bring you to the map. We're going to change all these light blue characteristics to manhole specific characteristics when you actually click on that manhole, so we could put some of, number of outlets, number of inlets. It'll probably just take us a couple more hours to get this at a more working draft. So again, we apologize for the messy example here, but just to show how you could use dashboards, we were actually asked last week after our training, some of utilities have their own ArcGIS license and they wanted to be able to create their own dashboards, which we would of course help with. But say we wanted to change this to refer to the sewer rather than the water map example we have. We can find that manhole or that inspection form and actually show the characteristics here. So you can add filters. There's a lot of back-end data stuff here, or you can make it just based off of that field. So if we wanted to say, all right, how many number of outlets do we have? And we have to change the labeling of this. So if I go to the indicator, I can change the number of outlets. And I could get rid of that icon just so it's that, or if we want a little outlet icon, you could put that there. You can change, the color. If anything, we were starting to make all of our selected light blue, so we'll keep that. So now if we kind of go through and we could do this for each of these existing condition damage that's notated. We'll change this to manholes that need attention. So a lot on the back end that we need to do, but there are some utility systems that actually want to try to create these dashboards on their own, and it can be a little complicated to figure out at first, but not too bad once you use it a little bit. So it is very nice. So if you have a web map built, it'll have all of the layers from that map. So here's Montague's. We have their sewer, their stormwater, and then the inspections itself. So we can reference anything on here. And so we kind of created a map or dashboard for each asset. So even though this map that we showed has all of the assets on one map, we can use a dashboard that reference that same map, but one for jetting and one for manhole inspections, which again, we're still updating. Gotta even update that top title. So work in progress, but that's kind of what we're working on. So, so sorry, I was getting lost in my track here. Go in here, panel. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of different fields that you could install a year, number of inlets, outlets. Those are pretty common. Cover size, like that might not vary in your wastewater system, so that might not be important. But I did work with a system up in Maine where they're using some Canadian size manhole lids that they wanted to replace the remaining of them. So you could even put a filter in here that shows cover sizes that would be equal to a certain, or I click cover type rather, cover size equal to, you could have like a certain size. So if they wanted to get rid of all their manhole covers that were 30-inch, I could click on that and it would filter out. Montague doesn't have any 30-inch, or it would pop up in here, but it just says no data. So you do have to be familiar with what kind of data set you're working with. Whenever you add a filter, it's going to hide all of the data, but they showed 1,023 manholes that they have, and you can actually look at all of their data through here to make good educated ways to how you're going to show this on the dashboard. So, I would put, since I put outlets already, I would put inlets as another here, and change that. And then this will automatically show that. Now, if they didn't record number of inlets for that selected feature, it'll show no value. So that's where once we add the trigger with the map to show um, the records on here, it's going to make a lot more sense when you click on that manhole. It'll show how many outlets, inlets, the size, etc. So if that makes sense, that's kind of how we build it on the back end. But typically, it'll already be built for you, and we'll take any recommendations of what to change. So
Yes, and Amy says, I wish I had this dashboard at my last job. I like tracking of maintenance items, and it's true. I mean, dashboard are another way to communicate. Sometimes we are get used to use story maps to communicate, just story maps or just experience builders. But dashboards are another way we have to use for communicate, and it's very cool. And yeah, it's a little bit, you can see it as a little bit tricky way to communicate using all the data here and there, as Adam is showing us, but it's a very cool way to show all the tables and all of this information that we have to everyone in a very simple and dynamic way. So yeah, it's very cool to show this tracking of all the data and in real time, which is the cooler part of all this, that once the people is updating the information, you are seeing in real time what is going on the field. So that's also that's super cool.
yeah, thanks, Paula. And yeah, the story maps we can show too as well. That story maps we usually use more for like engaging with our audience as far as our customers, the public, because we can share that publicly. You could share dashboards publicly, but it's more for internal tracking. Um, when we were creating, actually, that's not even the right one, but we have like a public dashboard too that we were doing for the training to show more basic. So like we could add in our sewer mains and manholes and lift stations, have all of the basic number count on one dashboard. And then we can have that dashboard link into other dashboards. But the big takeaway too with our experience builders, let me go to my demo one here. This one. All these apps kind of work together, but ultimately we're trying to get all of our maps inside this experience builder that you can use on your laptop computer, and then your phone would have the field maps and survey 123 that you do the actual GPSing or inspection records. But all these dashboards we can actually link up to the experience builder, because we know for utilities you're already managing a lot between your physical infrastructure, your software applications. You might have a customer billing software system. You might have SCADA if your water system, um, and really anything to track. Everything gets overwhelming. So we're hoping to have just kind of one central place that you can find your different dashboards. So instead of flushing valve exercise leaks, like this week, we'll be working on the wastewater side now that we have kind of a working example on the water side. And it'll always be a work in progress, but whenever you come back to this experience builder, whatever we edit on the back end, we can click here and set links that'll go to that dashboard and update things. So all it takes on the utility side is a refresh of a button. Um, and kind of same thing with the surveys. If you have a survey that we've updated, that also can be re-downloaded. So it's not as easy as a refresh, but half the time it will prompt you on the survey 123 what that looks like. And here, I don't think I have any updates now, but if you do, you can refresh in here. So you'll have all of your surveys. You can click on your little icon, and that's where the updates would pop up into here. So you can refresh and make sure that's like the latest survey that we have. I will pull up my phone in a second. I know Seth emailed me a copy, so let me pull up what that paper record looked like just to show that before I get into the phone. No, I'm jumping around a lot right now. It's pretty informal, as you can see, but let me open this image. Hold on, downloading. Okay, it's opening up now. So this is Hazel Township's original paper inspection. It's pretty thorough. A lot of wastewater breaks down the sub assets a lot more than on the water side as far as if you're doing a manhole inspection, because you have so much different components of that manhole, such as you see in the numbers. So I like how they had it. You know, your location's always the first point. The manhole characteristics as far as the material and type, and then they get into the nitty gritty of each sub asset, such as the cover, if that's missing, damaged, cracked, anything like that. You could observe that, record it here. So before, you know, they'd have to use this in a paper form. They might draw out a manhole layout rather than have an existing one already from their GIS map. A photo, I'm not even sure. Maybe they would upload photos from their phone after and then print off this page. Like, so there's a lot of maybe back and forth you'd have to do. And, you know, I've worked with utilities that have had disgruntled operators that have gotten rid of paper records after they left, or it was never typed into a computer, and then you have a natural disaster or a flood or something. So there are some concerns when you're only doing things in a paper form if something happens. So that's kind of the downside. You know, the upside is you don't have to rely on any technology issues, but luckily, once we've had these surveys created, seems like it's worked pretty well. So again, if we kind of look at that one more time versus the actual inspection form. So I'll click one I haven't here. There's Seth again, get the inspect manhole. So it loads up really quick. It can work completely offline, so you don't have to say, oh, what if I don't have internet? We can create that to work offline. So the survey would upload the results after you have internet connection. The only thing to notate with that is if you don't have online, then that black halo might not show right away until you have internet connection. Then it'll show you which ones you've inspected. But generally, if you're there in person walking down the road, you're going to know that which ones you've done. It's kind of more looking back at the yesterday or the last week or a month ago. Then it gets a little more foggy of where the inspection went. But anyways, I'm gonna see if I can side by side show this. Let me put that. I can maybe do this. So yeah, if you kind of look, what's nice with the GIS is you skip the location because we have the GPS point, we have the photo, and any location description or notes is going to be found in the actual manhole in here. So you could put even a street view. So if we click on this, it'll even show. Um, oh, might not be available here. So that it won't work for all of them on that street view. Let me try another. We might have to reset that. Okay, it's interesting. Haven't had that happen before. I don't know, Seth, if you have. But anyway, so you can have that location show there. So if you know any location description, if you wanted to add, we can add into the actual manhole because that location's not going to change the surface type unless some road changes, then you'd want to update it. But if we go back in to my side by side, we essentially are
Sorry for
starting.
interrupt here. There is a question that Eric is doing that I can answer
Oh
in the
yeah.
chat, and it is, do you usually create the paper orders and electronic to show operators the convenience of doing it paperless? If you
Um,
want to read it better in the chat.
so typically utilities will already have the paper inspection for maybe the past 10, 20 years. They've been using that. So you can still utilize the paper, but the downside again is you have to re-enter all the data um, into a GIS system survey so you can actually track it and um, see everything. And the other positive to the GIS versus the paper, if everyone has a phone on them in your utility system, everyone can view real time or within the past day what kind of work's been done without having to have that physical paper in your hand. So, the papers, you could have one person with a stack of paper going out in the field, but also if it's like rainy outside, then it might, or if you get some chocolate on there or something. So there's a lot of things that I've seen using the paper form. I didn't fully understand the question, I guess, but I'll have to look at it here in the chat again.
Yeah, Adam, can I just elaborate a little bit about my question?
Yes.
I think that what I noticed, and especially that could be more like a generational divide, that a lot of people used to do it the paper way, because
Hmm.
that was the only way, the traditional way of collecting information and doing all these orders, you know. But I think that when you show them what you are showing us on the screen, you can see that you can really reduce substantially the amount of paperwork that you have to do, and you will have the information daytime. And the information is basically um, happening at the same time that you are. It's not that you take the paper, you collect the information on the paper, and afterwards you bring it to the office and do the updating there, but you are doing in real time. And I think that that's one way, a persuasive way of convincing some operators to switch from one way to another one, because it reduces the amount of paperwork that you have to do.
Yeah, definitely. And the other nice thing too is all of this data in the GIS we can turn back into paper form. It does require us to create a template of how we want this to export and look like. But generally we just do it into Excel because it automatically puts the columns based on the field. But we do have, through Survey 123 reports, ways to actually um, show. Let me show a hydrant feature report. There's some good examples on. Let me see. Let me put in this see if we can find one here. So here's like a simpler version, but it shows hydrant inspections. I know this is small. I'll try to zoom in here for a minute. But we can simply put, and we could do this with manholes easily too, which manholes need maintenance. So we're only putting the fields that need maintenance and the inspector name, etc. So you could limit what you actually print out on a paper form too if you needed to give to a contractor or someone, because we know it's very ideal to have all of this in GIS and everyone use GIS, and honestly in the future it probably will be that, but it's going to take some time for everyone to be on one central system. So um, but that's a kind of example of where all of this data from our surveys here, um, we can build it out in Microsoft Word as a template, and we can even put letterheads and all that other stuff in here. I'm just going to scroll down to where it shows the actual values. And I have one or two of these examples, but you can see like the inspector, we can have the field name. So whatever information was logged on here, um, we'll be able to export into that paper. So, and the other advantage, what Eric's saying, like going from paper to here, I think the big thing is this entire top section you don't have to do with the GIS. You have the date automatically or time if you're doing it in real time, or you can, backtrack this date or time. And it's a lot quicker, I think, to just click on a button or go back a year and click there and, change the time, versus having to write it all out. And then your manhole ID is automatically stored within this GIS, so you don't have to find out what ID you're at, which can be overwhelming if you have, hundreds or thousands of manholes or gravity mains, whatever you're inspecting or jetting. So the street, all that information you don't have to log now every single time it does it. And you kind of just start, and I think the organization too, like if nothing's wrong with the pipes, like your observations, you might not even have to expand this. Like this is going to be no problems. There's no infiltration. So I might not even have to click on that, versus here, I might have to put an X on it or some indication that it's good to go. Um, so I think that's another advantage of using these surveys, or even just the field maps, having more of like a SOP workflow that we can then turn into a lot more than just a piece of paper that we would have to type into an Excel or something, and then you could maybe create some dashboards or analytics from. But I think there's a lot of advantages from the record keeping to the data entry and then the analytics. But again, it's really getting utilities comfortable and using it and making sure that we help along the way as well, so that everyone feels confident to use a structure like this. But does anyone have any general questions, or I know we have about 15 minutes left, and it's a pretty informal. I saw
Adam,
Rebecca hopped on here too. Oh, Jamie, you have your hand.
yeah, I just put it up, but quick question. On the wastewater side of things with that, Adam, could you do a dashboard for, say, when the sewer district gets called out for a sewer line blockage at a residence, and they want to document pictures with, say, the contractors there digging it up, and they want to document where the blockage was on the customer side
Yeah, I think
for
even
laterals,
exactly, that's what I was gonna say. Like if we kind of make a dashboard based on each asset, the nice thing is we could have a dashboard that shows laterals and have on the left hand side the customer details, the right hand side the utility, or vice versa. Or if you wanted a dashboard to separate the utility from the customer side, because I know generally if you're doing the customer side laterals, you might be charging that customer, and we could record info of like, how much you charged for that. I know in the past I was working on one for Holton up in Maine. We didn't get started to actually deploy um, the survey side of it because they end up GPSing and recording a lot of the information. I can see if I can pull that up because I actually show some lateral example usage. Let me see, jetting. Yeah, I'll pull up here. And again, all of this survey data would turn into the dashboard. So this is a third example I'll kind of show here. That was um, so, the jetting, if you wanted to put customer instead of utility, was jetting response to a customer request. Then you can put any complaints that were there. So it's nice whenever you click on one, it'll hide or show certain questions that are relevant. The kind of cleaning service, they have a truck and a trailer or trailer. They might have upgraded their sense, like where it's all in one now. I'd have to talk to them again and see, but um, we can put the total hose length used, like say we have 600 available, it'll show the percentage, time started, um, jetting stop time, if you want to put PSI, GPM. And no, like you don't have to fill everything out. Like if you don't know the PSI or the GPM, you don't have to put those. But if you do, more information. And this would just kind of mention what was done. And we actually did add kind of like a billing section. So if your cost of jetting to the customer, you could actually have all of this go in a dashboard and track it, which would be pretty neat. So if you had to bill 5 customers in the past 6 months for some lateral cleaning, then we could actually add up the costs together and show like, oh, the utility had $2,000 of revenue from lateral cleaning or something like that. Um, and there's probably additional stuff that they have like different sewer zone numbers if they wanted to track that, but we could even just use the map to kind of see where that cleaning was. So yeah, there, and then you can get nitty gritty and really put the equipment info. But if your utility and have the same equipment, we could put default values so you never even have to open this section. But say if you had a contractor or different contractors that come with different equipment, you wanted to record the horsepower and say, oh, well, we just need something stronger to clean this out, then you could record that kind of information. So, yeah, there's a lot of potential, and I feel bad because we've always put wastewater more on the back burner than water, I feel like. That's just kind of a utility thing that I often see a lot internally and externally. But there's so much to track and do with wastewater that we're going to really try to pick up our applications this year for that. As I'm showing a water dashboard, right? But yeah, I guess we got about 10 minutes left. Let me see. I can see if I can try to share my phone screen of what that looks like. If anyone else has questions, I see some more chat going around. Thanks, Rebecca, for kind of chiming in for Eric and showing. And I was going to even show, yeah, how Montague's looks like. And I know Rebecca's gone back and put in a lot of paper records using the computer. But if Kyle, their operator's out in the field, he can use his phone, and we've kind of simplified the process a little bit from the survey. So let me see if I can pull that up real quick. Share
I
my
think there's just as
phone.
much, Adam. I think there's just as much use wastewater wise there is water wise. Being a guy that did both, I think,
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. And that's what, in a lot of our small
especially if
utilities,
with
this,
another
go
thing
ahead.
I would do is, which I'm sure you could generate is like, as far as like integrating pump station checks into that. Um, every time they stop at a pump station, go have a checklist on there that they can just click on and be in that same sewer maintenance
Yeah,
dashboard.
that's something I've really wanted to do is create a survey. It would be pretty quick to create, and what we could actually do is put a QR code on that pump station or
Right.
lift station, and then you could just scan it as an operator, and it'd bring you right to the survey that you need to fill out that daily or weekly info. And
I think
that would
that's
be a great quick way we could deploy a useful application and attach it with a dashboard. Um, so yeah, we Jamie's the operator, well, not ex operator, you're still operator. I like to joke around, but no, it's really helpful having more recommendations and critiques on the utility side because like I have a GIS background, but I'm still learning every day about water and wastewater. So um, we're always open to any kind of suggestions. But anyways, if we just click on a manhole here, it's showing the sewer mains because you're kind of clicking on both. But if we click again and hit the manhole, it'll have all of our fields based on the static data of that manhole. So things that aren't going to change unless you replace that manhole, such as if there's inlets, outlets, number of vent holes, and all of that information. But if we click on the manhole inspection form, we can add a record. It'll automatically have our manhole asset ID recorded. Um, we added this because Rebecca's helping Kyle do a lot of past inspections, and I think this is going to be the case for most utilities because there's a lot of paper records. So that's nice to know. And based off of you know, if we put past, then we can put the date or time of the inspection. And once she goes through with Kyle and enters in all the past inspections, maybe we can get rid of this question and only have the current time and date. But I think there'll always be a time where you might do something and maybe you didn't use the GIS to record it. So I can put the initials, I can put the weather, and fill out a lot of this pretty quickly. And it's still just like the survey has groups, and everything is accessible by one application versus, if I hit submit, then they'll submit that record. Um, versus if we go to Hazel Township, I have to find what the name of that one was. Seth, it was like final. Oh, here it is. I got it. So if I go in on here, same similar process, but if I click on a manhole, it'll have, a photo of it, any information they logged, street view, etc. But if I hit this inspect manhole button on the survey, it opens up the survey automatically, has the date, time, everything here. So some people prefer the survey 123 because it's a little nicer of a SOP interface, and you can do like drawings of. Actually, I can try this here. So I'm gonna just kind of click here, and now I can actually draw arrows on here, and I can put label text. So like I could put like 8-inch. I know it doesn't look very well here, but you can actually draw on the photo, which is neat. And then hit check. Any additional photos I want, I can upload. And then I can go through and answer these questions. So it's a very similar layout. And once you hit submit, you just have to go back into the map and then you can go to the next one. So yeah, we recommend either workflow. Either works great. Just depends on, you might have a lot of operators, you might have more people that are interested in going the next tech level or such. But we can try to make it as simple or complex as you need it. But we always try to make it simple. But let me hide that. So yeah, I'll stop sharing. I hope for our next RCDI training we'll have a working wastewater dashboard for both. Maybe I'll work with Jamie and get some lift station and water pump stations too, because I've been meaning to add that to our operation maintenance record keeping. But if you guys have any ideas to email, let us know. Um, I think to answer Rebecca's question of what, like, personally, like, I like the survey 123 because I think part of it's maybe we've invested more time in developing it, and so it can be a little easier to navigate once you're in the survey. But the field maps related record tables have come a long way. So we used to only use more survey 123 because the field maps didn't have the capabilities that we needed. But now field maps can do calculations and bring asset IDs over and some things that we weren't able to do even a year ago. So yeah, but I will stop sharing. Guess we got like 3 minutes left. But yeah, just kind of open up. I guess you can leave whenever at this point now. If I didn't know Stanley or Alexandria, and I know we have a lot of RCAP people on here. Jonathan, if you guys had any critiques, recommendations, or something you'd want to see, we definitely plan on following up with a lot of utilities to try to help them out. We've been kind of bombarded lately here at RCAP, but we're finally getting some more employees again and getting back on track.
I have a question, maybe something that might be an idea for future training, but I was wondering a little bit between our communication with the engineering companies that sometimes they are holding some of the information because the information might be, property of the system, but it might be managed by an engineering company. So I was wondering that communication between us and them in a way that is constructive for the system, I think will be great to know a little bit
Yes,
more about
yes,
it, because I think it's sometimes, we could be perceived like we are taking business away from engineers, which is not exactly what we want to do. But I
right.
think it's the sharing information sometimes could be tricky. And I think that maybe we should um, get to know a little bit more about what are the tricky parts and how we can handle them.
Yeah, good point, Eric. I mean, I've seen it across states, working in multiple states with RCAP, and it really is between the engineer firm and RCAP and the community. But my big takeaway learning lesson, if you're having an engineer do work for you, such as manhole inspections, and most of them actually do use GIS or ArcGIS to log that information. So that's data that we could put directly into dashboards directly and show the community. The one critique I have from engineer firms is they don't want to give everything to the community in their fingertips, where I think at RCAP that's what we strive for, is empowering the community as much as possible without overwhelming them. I know sometimes there's certain roles that we have to fill, but if anything's in writing, always put that any inspection data will be shared, if it's GIS data, because we've run into issues where the engineer firm only gives us PDFs, even though there's GIS data, and then they want additional money for that GIS data, even though they can export it with a button. So I definitely recommend, if you know how they're going about their engineering work, if they're using any kind of GIS, to be transparent and say, hey, will you be able to share this data? And you can even mention RCAP works with us and helps our GIS system, and we can share that data with the engineer firm, and we have a lot of data that we live share. And I've gotten emails from engineer GIS employees say, oh, I liked what you did on that utility system, and so they're looking at it too. But it's really up to the community as well. We don't have to share everything if they don't want that shared with the engineer firm, but we try to be on the same team. We're never trying to compete with them. We're a complete different service under the nonprofit, but we do do some overlap of work. So that's a good point, Eric. Um, and did you have anything to add for that, Eric? I know your hand's still up. Maybe it was just from second go. I know we're at 2 p.m. as well, so um, appreciate you guys hopping on today. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to crack in a little deeper next RCDI meeting. And
But it's been great. I'm learning a lot, and I think it's interesting to see that some of the common problems that we have, you know, in the sharing information, sometimes we also need. I think that what I run into, you remember that from the Canaan situation, is that sometimes we generate information and somebody else requests the information from the other side, and sometimes we I don't know, sometimes how you can handle that in a sense that the information could be perceived as a proprietary information in a way. So sometimes,
mhm.
you get into these gray areas where, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, and that's at RCAP, we'll never withhold the data. As soon as we start a project with you, the data is yours at any time. We can export it and give it to a different entity. So we kind of hope that standard is for everybody out there, but it's not always the case. So again, if you're paying for a service, or even if it's free or at no cost, like a grant, they might have in the writing, we'll do all this work for you, but the data is ours or something. And you really want to make sure that that's not the case, because we want to be able to share this data, and you put a lot of work into it. So you want to be able to always export and get that results. But again, yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll send email out for the future RCDI. Will be next quarter, I think. Let's see, it's April now, so definitely before fall, in the summer. We didn't have a set date. Usually we try to get at least a couple of dates, but we'll send out an email. And if you have any questions, just reach out to Adam, me, Paula, or Seth. I didn't notice Seth wasn't even on the call anymore. I kept asking for something, so. But all right, thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Adam.